Hello, and welcome to the Bamboo Lab podcast with your host, peak performance coach, Brian Bosley. Are you stuck on the hamster wheel of life, spinning and spinning, but not really moving forward? Are you ready to jump off and soar? Are you finally ready to sculpt your life? If so, you've landed in the right place. This podcast is created and broadcast just for you. All of you strivers, thrivers, and survivors out there. If you'd like to learn more about Brian and the Bamboo Lab, feel free to reach out to explore your true peak level at www.bamboolab3.com.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Bamboo Lab podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Bosley. Folks, I have to share with you today, I have been excited for this interview for 2 years now. We have one of my personal and professional heroes on today. And other than my mother, who we haven't gotten on yet, I'll be able to say that again, hopefully in a few months when she comes on. This is the first time I've ever introduced somebody as such. Today, folks, we have Dr. Marshall Goldsmith on. Marshall has been recognized as one of the top 10 business thinkers in the world and the top-rated executive coach at the Thinkers 50th ceremony in London since 2011. Folks, he is a mentor and coach to the top executives and thinkers and leaders all across the world. He has written 4 New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestsellers. One is called The Earned Life, which I just finished reading a few weeks ago. Another one is Mojo. The third one is Triggers, which I just finished this week for the second time. And my personal all-time success book titled What Got You Here Won't Get You There. The editors of Amazon.com have recognized 2 of his books, both Triggers and What Got You Here Won't Get You There, as being in the top 100 leadership and success books ever written. He is the only author alive today with 2 books on the list. On LinkedIn, Marshall has been ranked number 58 for content creators in the world out of 250 million users. And on all social medias, he's in the top 10 of all content creators in the field of leadership and management. But more importantly, he's a Buddhist philosopher. He's the father of 2. He's a grandfather. And he's a husband to Lida. My new friend, Marshall, welcome to the Bamboo Lab podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm honored to be here.
Well, thank you. No, I told you before we started recording, I've been following you since 2007, since I read the book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, which just changed the way I think about my life, both personally and professionally. So I've gotten to study you and, watch your content on social media and the documentary that was recently made about you. But can you please tell the audience, the Bamboo Pack as we call them, a little bit about yourself, where you're from, your childhood, your family, who or what inspired you growing up?
Well, I like that title, Helping Ordinary People Do Extraordinary Things. I was brought up in a background, you could say it was pretty ordinary. I'm from a small town in Kentucky called Valley Station, Kentucky. I was brought up in a low-income, low-education environment. The first 4 years we were in school, we had an outhouse. We didn't have indoor plumbing, so I didn't go to Harvard Prep. And my high school came in number 2 from the bottom in Kentucky in academic achievement. So that's, I wasn't brought up to writing 4 New York Times bestsellers from there. The odds were not real good. So then I went to undergrad school at a little engineering school, Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology. I made very high test scores, fortunately, and a terrible attitude. Almost got thrown out, made 5 Ds, barely graduated. But last year I went back and gave the commencement address and got an honorary PhD. And I said, let's hear it for the bottom of the class. You never know. You never know who's going to be a success here. Let's hear it for the bottom. Then I got an MBA at Indiana University and a PhD at UCLA. I was college professor and dean. And then for the next 47 years, I did 3 things. I traveled all around the world speaking and teaching. So I've been to 102 countries on American Airlines alone. I have over 11 million frequent flyer miles. I'm a mega flyer. Then I love speaking and teaching. I don't do that anymore, but I did it for 47 years. Then I coach people. As you mentioned, I'm in the coaches, CEO of Ford, Pfizer, Glaxo, World Bank, Walmart, Mayo Clinic, on and on and on. And what I like about coaching is that's where I learn everything. So I've coached 5 people who are CEO of the year in the United States. And so I've learned a whole lot from these people. And then the final thing is, as you mentioned, I write books and articles. Now, I have done 4 New York Times bestsellers, but I've also done about 50 books that virtually no one read other than my mother, my father, and associated relatives. So I had done a few books and sold 4 million copies, but I've also done a bunch that didn't sell any. So anyway, life is good. I live in Nashville. I now will impress your listeners. I've got fancy neighbors. One of my neighbors is in the Rascal Flats, a great country group. Nicole Kidman is one of my neighbors. Keith Urban is my neighbor. Reese Witherspoon is my neighbor. And the woman that owns the house across the street is Taylor Swift. So, wow. So I live here in Nashville. My daughter's a professor at Vanderbilt. That's why I live here. I got 2 grandkids here. And my son's an entrepreneur, and he lives in Austin, Texas. So that's the story of me.
Well, wasn't your daughter on the TV show Survivor?
She was on the 3rd season of Survivor. About 40 people watched her every week. Yeah, so she was on Survivor in the 3rd season, and that kind of went to her head. So she went to Hollywood after that to be a movie star. That lasted about 2 years. So she got her butt handed to her, which is good for her. It taught her a little humility. Then she went back to Yale and got a PhD. And as I said, now she's an endowed chair, full professor at Vanderbilt. And then she's now the associate provost, whatever that is.
Yeah, I did some research on your children, and I did see that. I didn't know she was on Survivor. That's one piece of information I did not know until the last few days.
Yeah, that's it.
You know, I've really been fascinated about learning about your childhood with your dad being was he a mechanic or he had an auto shop of some type?
He had a little 2-pump gas station. In Valley Station, Kentucky. Yeah, mechanic and auto shop would be a stretch. This is a 2-pump gas station.
And your mother said to you when you were growing up? I thought that was so. I've heard you talk about this so many times about your mother talking about your mechanical skills.
Yeah, she told me I was smart. I was extremely smart. I was probably the smartest kid in Valley Station, Kentucky. And I had no mechanical skills, and I will never have any mechanical skills. She didn't want me to work at the gas station.
Right. Well, how'd that turn out for you? What kind of mechanical skills do you have today?
Well, what happened is I'm never encouraged around cars, tools, mechanical things, so I don't learn. So my friends, what do you think about this universal joint? I thought that was something people smoked, right? I don't know what universal joint is. And I take a test to go, United States Army aptitude test. I think I scored in the bottom 2 percentile of the United States. They showed you pictures of tools. You had to guess the name of the tools. I know the name of these tools, right? So now the United States Army said I have no mechanical aptitude. Oh, by the way, key word to this conversation on a serious note is the word aptitude. Now, no mechanical achievement means you haven't done it. No mechanical aptitude means you can't do it. Can't do it. When somebody says you have no aptitude, that means you can't do it. So I've never encouraged you on any of this stuff. I'm 26 years old. I'm getting a PhD at UCLA. And the teacher is a guru figure. Dr. Tannenbaum says, what are you good at? What do you need to do better? Well, I said, what am I good at? Oh, scholarly pursuits, research. What was I saying? Smart. I am smart. What do you know good at? I said, I have no mechanical skills. I will never have any mechanical skills. He said, how do you know? I said, it's hopeless. I took a test. I was defeated by random chance. He said, how are your mathematical skills? Oh, perfect score in the SAT math achievement test, 9 courses of math past calculus, excellent mathematical skills. He said, why is it you can solve complex mathematical problems, but you cannot solve simple mechanical problems? I thought that was a good point. He says, how's your hand-to-eye coordination? I said, I guess it's okay. I could play pinball games, shoot pool. He said, why could you play pinball games and shoot pool, but you can't hammer nails? When I was 26 years old, I realized there's only one reason I had no mechanical aptitude. I was told I had no mechanical skills. There's no physiological reason I had no mechanical skills. And I just believed it, and it became part of my identity. So I see this all the time when I coach people. Somebody says, I can't listen. I've never been able to listen. I can't listen. Look at the guy's ears. What, you got something stuck in there? Why can't you listen? Well, you can't listen because you keep telling yourself you can't listen.
Well, we share a similar story. I grew up in a small town in Michigan, and my father who passed away in 1971 when I was 4.5, and he was a mechanic and owned a gas station and an auto repair shop as well. And I was young, but he would tell my 2 older brothers, if you ever pick up a wrench, I'm going to hit you with it. There's a better way to make a living. And one of my brothers has 0 mechanical aptitude skills or has tried them. The other one is very adept at, building, fixing, repairing. So one listened and one didn't. And I was too young to hear him, so I don't think he was talking to me. But
it's the way life is.
you shared a story that I heard one time, Marshall, about I believe the gentleman Dennis Mudd. Was that the name? He did a roof for your parents.
Yeah, that's what led to my. Let me tell you, I got into the coaching
that'd be
business
great.
or the leadership development business at all. So I'm a very young man, and I just finished my PhD at UCLA. So I'm very fortunate. I met this man named Dr. Paul Hersey. Now, he and Ken Blanchard invented something called situational leadership. I'm very lucky. So I'm a young guy. So he kindly invites me to go to his class for free, which costs $500 a person back then. So I'm sitting in the back going, man, this guy's good. I want to be him when I grow up. Well, I said, look, I'll serve the coffee. I'll move the tables. I'll sit in the back. Just let me sit here and learn from you. That was smart. One day he got double booked. He said, can you do what I do? I said, I don't know. Can you do this? I said, I don't know. He said, I'll pay $1,000 for one day. This was 47 years ago. I'm a 28-year-old kid. I'm making $15,000 a year. He said, I'll give you $1,000 for a day. I said, sign me up, coach. So I fly to New York. I do a program for the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company. They're phenomenally angry when I show up because I'm not him. But then I got ranked first place of all the speakers for the whole 2-week program. He calls them up expecting to get his butt handed to him. And people at MetLife said, look, we were upset, but this guy came in first place. Send him again. He called me up and says, you want to do this again? I said, I'm making $15,000 a year. You're paying $1,000 a day. Yes, sir, I'll do this again. That's how I got into leadership development. And in coaching, somewhat accidental. There was nothing called executive coaching. There was no field of coaching. No. So I just meet this CEO I'm working with. He says, I got this kid, young, smart, dedicated, hardworking. He said, he's a jerk. He's arrogant, stubborn. It would be worth a fortune to me if we change kids' behavior. So remembering our previous conversation, I said, I like fortunes. Maybe I could help him. He said, I doubt it. I said, I think I could do it. He said, I doubt it. I said, look, I'll work with a kid for a year. He gets better pay me. You don't get better, it's free. What did the CEO say? Sold. You get better, I got paid. I did not get paid 1 cent for my coaching for 47 years, unless my clients got better. Better was not judged by me or them, it's judged by everyone around them. Where did I learn this? Dennis Mudd. Back in Kentucky. We were poor. The roof starts leaking. You got to have a new roof. You may be poor, but you don't have a roof. The house is trashed. Well, to save money, my dad had me try to help Dennis Mudd. All right, so I tried to help Dennis Mudd. We make this roof. And the roof, he's very proud of the roof, worked very hard. It got me interested to try to do a good job. So the roof gets done. Dennis Mudd, who was, by the way, probably even more poor than we were, looks at my dad named Bill and says, Bill, I want you to inspect the roof. If that roof is of high quality, pay me. If that roof is not of high quality, it's free. I looked at Dennis Mudd. I was maybe 14, 15. You know what I said? I want to be him when I grow up. Wow. That guy's poor, but he's not cheap.
Right. And as somebody who truly believes in their craft and wants to, they have their purpose down in life is to provide, in his case for Dennis, was to provide a solid roof, keep the customer happy. And you got to wonder, I think about stories like that. I've heard you share that story before, and I think I read it in The Earned Life or one of the books that I've read. And I thought, think about those moments in life when we have an opportunity like Dennis did when you were 14 years old to say that to your father, where he didn't think that this was going to create a turning point for you or something that you were going to take later on in life and use it to impact the world. And I think about stories like that in the sense of everything we do and say is being watched to some degree. Some by a lot of people, some by 1 or 2 persons. But at the same time, it's when we do things like that, it can have such a dramatic turning point for another human being that watches how we choose to either use our integrity or perhaps not to use our integrity for the negative. And when I read that story, it made me think, and I read that story, I think for the first time a few months ago, about Dennis sharing that with your father and you being, a participant in when he said that. I thought, oh my gosh, I wonder how I'm acting, the things I'm saying. How am I holding my own integrity in my belief system for the value I provide to people? How am I holding that to that test? That's a tough test to hold yourself to say, I'm not going to get paid unless I do the job. And I think that's fantastic. And I didn't know that's how your fee for service with your clients was structured either until the last year or so. I think that's fantastic.
Well, what happened is, to me, Dennis Mudd had more integrity than I will ever have. Why? He was poor.
Right.
He needed the money. And, he doesn't get paid. He doesn't eat so well.
Right.
I was never that poor. When I was working with Paul Hersey, when I was talking to that CEO, right? I was making $200,000 a year 45 years ago.
Yeah.
I wasn't poor. I was not poor, And what I did is integrity. What he did was more integrity.
Okay, that's a good way to look at it. But I do see that a lot, though, Marshall, in the world. I see a lot of people who have nothing are the ones who oftentimes give the most. I agree with you. And you're saying ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I published that thing about Dennis Mudd that you read, and then somebody sent me an email and said, after Dennis Mudd put on roofs, he was a bus driver. And then after he would drop me off in the bus, he would talk to me sometimes. This kid became the number one small business guy in Kentucky. You know what he said? Thank you, Dennis Mudd. Wow. It gives me goosebumps when I think about the impact we have on people around us and everything we say, think, feel, do. People are watching. And if we all could take that into account in our own lives, what dramatic impact we could make to better this world.
I completely agree.
Dennis or Marshall, one of the things that reminds me of Dennis, when I was living in Grand Rapids, Michigan, I moved 4 years ago to follow my daughter and my son, kind of like you did from moving to Kentucky. My daughter moved to Marquette, Michigan on Lake Superior, and 3 years later, my son graduated high school and declared to go to Northern Michigan University, which is in the same town my daughter lives on Lake Superior. And I followed them up. But before then, every Christmas, or right around Christmas season, my son and I would go buy 25, 30 pizzas, and we'd collect clothing and boots and hats and jackets and scarves. And a couple of years we brought his friends with us, took them right out of school and said, this is what we're doing. We would go down to the poorest area of Grand Rapids, Michigan, downtown in the city, where the homeless people would, come out of the shelters. And we would give pizzas, and we'd open up the back of my Jeep and we'd give out clothes. And what I was so surprised by this. I would offer a pizza to everybody, a full pizza, and they wouldn't take it and run. They would go down the street and they'd open it up to their friends. And when we drive away, we'd see, 3 or 4 blocks down the road, there'd be a big group of people eating a box of pizza that the one person who got it from us was sharing with them. And I would stop and ask individuals who I didn't think had pizza, who weren't there when we gave it away, hey, could I give you some clothes or pizza? And so many of these people would say, no, I have had enough food today and I have enough clothing, but there's a group of people down here that might need it. And I thought, these people have literally almost nothing materialistically in life, but yet they're turning down food. They're sharing food. They're sharing clothing and offering it to other people. And it was such an eye-opening experience for myself, and especially for my son and his friends, when they were, 11, 12, 13 years old. And so when I read about Dennis, I thought, that's so true in so many areas of life. Those who have the least often give the most. And as long as the integrity is intact. So I like that.
Yeah, it's completely true.
Can I ask you a question? I love this question, Marshall. If in the last, let's say 12 months, what is one of the greatest learnings you've had in life?
I would say in the last 12 months, as I've grown older and older, my mission in life has become simpler and simpler. For everyone listening, you're part of my mission in life. My mission today is quite simple. I want to help you, a real human being, have a little better life. So if one person listening to this podcast has a little better life, that's my mission.
Well, I know you've done that already today with me. So, and when this thing airs, I think you're going to help a few people have a little better life. Thank you for that. Now, was that something when you were younger, starting off in coaching? Did you have a different mission back then, or a different purpose, or had you even really defined your purpose yet?
No, I was just making it up as I went. There was nothing called coaching.
I know there wasn't.
People said you want to be this when you grew up. There was no this, right? I just made it up, and basically, look, I always enjoyed what I did. So it's not like look, I started out poor, but when I went into business, I went to work with Paul Hersey. I made a ton of money as a kid. I mean, when I was 40 years old, I moved into basically today's $5-6 million home. So, I didn't start at the bottom. My first clients were IBM, McKinsey, Warner Lambert, Weyerhaeuser, et cetera. So I kind of started at the top, again, because of Paul Hersey. The reason I give everything away is because of Peter Drucker and Paul Hersey and all the people that helped me. Maybe I can help somebody else.
Well, I think, one of the things I think about when I started 29 years ago, and you started long before I did, and I know you're the pioneer of really kind of the pioneer of executive coaching. I refer to you as the godfather of executive coaching, and from my perspective anyway, and you're, I think, one of the founders of the 360 feedback custom design, 360 feedback. So I can't imagine, when I started, I didn't know there were things as executive coaches. I just knew I was a fairly good motivator and inspirer of people when I worked for American Express Financial, and I was young and naive, so I didn't know any better. And
when did you work for American Express?
I started there in 1991, and as a financial advisor.
Who was the CEO?
Harvey Golub. Harvey Golub.
Harvey Golub was one of my clients.
He was?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I remember I got a chance to talk with him one time. We were in Monterey, California.
American Express was our biggest client.
Okay. Yeah, he was I remember he came to our leadership conference in Monterey, California, and I was there, and he left, and a helicopter flew him in, and they flew him out, and he was walking out the door with a couple of guys surrounding him, like, I don't know if they were security, because he couldn't fly commercial, I don't think, because of potential terrorist threats. So I remember he was going to the helicopter that was there, and I looked around, and nobody was walking him to his helicopter other than these two security guys. So I piled it behind him, and I started talking to him. And I said, I just want to thank you. He asked me who I was, where I came from, and I said, I'm the Detroit region. He goes, oh, you're one of John Hantz's boys. John Hantz was our vice president in charge of Detroit. I said, yeah. I shook his hand, and he got in his helicopter and flew away. It was one of the highlights of my life. I thought, why is nobody else taking this 30-second opportunity to meet the CEO of our company, of our parent company?
Well, I know Harvey Golub very well, or I knew him very well. He was our biggest customer for a while.
Wow.
American Express. Yeah, in fact, there's a guy named Joe Kilty. That he was head of HR for American Express. And the name of our business was Kilty, Goldsmith and Company.
Okay.
So Joe was my partner, went to work for Harvey. Okay. So I got a long history there.
Well, we have a few similarities then. You know another similarity we have? We share the same birthday.
March 20th.
March 20th, yeah. I just noticed that a couple of days ago when I was preparing to talk to you. I thought, that's our fathers were both in the mechanical trades, didn't want us to go into that trade, and we both share a birthday. So
well, there you go.
Can I ask you a question? I love this question, Marshall, and it's a really deep question that a lot of my listeners like to hear. What is one of the most difficult things you have gone through in your life? And then how did you get through that time?
Well, I think, if I look at my life, I have been remarkably blessed. And I think one of my most difficult adjustments when I was young was just making peace with life. When I was in undergrad school, I was not particularly happy back then. And, I was more angry, self-righteous, know-it-all, and really not happy. And over the years, just learning to make peace with life. There's another story I've written about Dr. Fred Case at UCLA who helped me. I'm working down at City Hall, and he was my dissertation advisor, and I'd been at UCLA for a while, and he was head of the planning commission. So I start ranting about the government of Los Angeles. Rah, rah, rah. Oh, he said, Marshall, I'm getting some negative feedback about you. Feedback is you're kind of negative and judgmental, and people don't like to be around you. What's the problem? I go, rah, 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 rah. I start complaining about the government of Los Angeles is inefficient. So he starts laughing at me. He says, what a stunning breakthrough. You, Marshall Goldsmith, oh, brilliant one, have discovered the city government of Los Angeles is inefficient. Do you have any other problems? He goes, oh, my goodness, you have discovered that when people give politicians millions of dollars, they're actually nicer to those people than everybody else. He said, I don't know, Marshall, I hate to tell you this, but my barber knew all this before he started. He said, I'm not going to give you a PhD for this. I said, Marshall, you're coming across as a pain in the butt, judgmental, whiny, and negative. Option A, you can continue this bad behavior and you're fired and you're never going to graduate with a PhD and you just wasted 5 years of your life. Or option B is you can start having some fun, try to do something good, make a real difference, but have fun and quit being a pain in the ass. What's it going to be, son? I said, well, Dr. Case, let's have a little fun here. Let's have some fun. That was good advice.
That's great advice. Do you think when you found Buddhism and you started incorporating Buddhism into your life, did that help you to kind of find that peace that you were looking for and to make peace with your life?
Oh, definitely. I'm not a religious Buddhist. I'm a philosophical Buddhist.
Right.
And I mean, to me, look, there are many schools of Buddhism. So when somebody says they're a Christian, well, they could be a Catholic or a Southern Baptist or Unitarian. That means very different things to different people. The differences in Buddhism are even bigger. So somebody says they're Buddhist doesn't really tell you much of anything. But my school of Buddhism is very simple. Buddha was, I don't know if there was a Buddha, but, thousands of years ago, who knows what really happened. But in any case, the metaphorical Buddha was brought up very rich. His father was a king. And he was protected from life. He lived in a bubble and kept getting more and more and surrounded by beauty and youth and all this stuff. But then one day he was able to sneak outside the bubble with his friend. And the first trip he learned, what's that? Ugh, people get old. Very bad. The second trip, he sneaks out. Ugh, what's that? People get sick. Even worse. Third trip, people die. Ugh. Old, sick, die. Not good. He said, all of this more stuff, that's not going to do it. He gave up on all that stuff and went out in the woods and basically starved himself and tried to live a very simple life. And that didn't work either. You know what he learned? You really can never be happy and find peace with more. You can also never be happy and find peace with less. You finally realize something. There's only one thing you can ever be happy and find peace with, what you have. And there's only one time you can ever find peace and happiness. When is that? That would be now. And there's only one place. That place is called here. That's it.
That's a tough one for a lot of people to incorporate. I know I have a challenge with that a lot.
Now breathing, I'm breathing. I'm going to give you some coaching. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Breathing. You just said, I have a challenge with this. Do you have an incurable genetic defect that is forcing you to continue having this challenge?
No.
Then quit saying, I have a challenge with this. I want you to repeat after me. I used to have a challenge with this.
I used to have a challenge with this.
I do not have an incurable genetic defect.
I do not have an incurable genetic defect.
Therefore, I do not have to continue having a challenge with this for the rest of my life.
Therefore, I do not have to continue being challenged with this for the rest of my life.
And I'm going to quit talking that way.
And I'm going to quit talking that way.
There you go.
There you go. I will listen to that and write those words down again, trust me. And I'll put those right next to my chair in my office every morning.
Very good. Very good.
I was really struck by the picture of you that you shared as one of your best pictures, one of your favorite pictures. I believe you were in Africa in 1984 with the Red Cross.
Yep, that was it. Yep.
I have that picture right now sitting propped up on my desk on my iPad. I know the audience can't see this picture, but can you share the meaning? So everybody, it's a picture of Marshall with the Red Cross with a bunch of African children, and they're testing them for primarily, for lack of a better way to say it, whether they're going to live or not. Can you share the meaning behind that picture in that moment, Marshall?
Yeah, there's pictures of me. Now, again, I'm very young. I don't know how old I was back. 1984, I can work backwards. So I'm a very young guy. I'm 35 years old. And, I'm a consultant, and I'm going to Africa because I was a volunteer coach for the CEO of the Red Cross in the United States. And he was kind enough to invite me on this trip. He thought it would be good for me. Well, he was right about that. Well, I go to Africa, and there they had a great famine and massive starvation. See, people in the United States say, well, we have starvation here. No, we don't. Americans have never seen starvation. When there is starvation, there is no food in a garbage can. There's no food on the floor. People eat anything. Starvation is ugly. I'm around thousands of people who are literally dying. Well, that picture shows me, and I'm kneeling down next to a woman, and she's kneeling down. And there's a long line of kids between the ages of 2 and 16. Why 2 and 16? Pretty random. If you're over 16, you're on your own. If you're under 2, you're going to die anyway. So she's measuring the arms of the kids. If their arm is too little, well, sorry, you're going to die anyway. No food for you. If the arm is too big, well, you're not hungry enough. The arm's in the middle, you got food. So that picture is in my office. I look at it every day. And I keep that picture as a little reminder. Every time I start wanting to complain about something, poor me, isn't life tough? Not so much. See, that picture is the me of then looking at the me today. And that me is sending a message to the me today. Be grateful for what you have. You're not in that line. By the way, that was hard for me. Yeah. Unbelievably difficult for me. I'm not measuring the arms.
Right. You're not making that final decision.
Yeah, I'm not sitting there playing God, right? She's literally sending kids off to their death. How hard is it for her? Next, how hard is it for the kids? That's not fun.
No.
But the worst, you look at that picture, what's the worst? Mama.
Yeah.
How hard is it for mama? Yeah, your kid dies. Sorry.
Wow. And one of the things that I got from that is just being grateful, practicing gratitude. And, obviously the external me, part of me wants to say, I want to go over there and save these children. But that's a very a large feat. But obviously we can donate our money, we can donate our resources, our time to do as much as we can for those who are so disenfranchised throughout the world. But the one thing is a lot of us don't have a lot of capacity to do that. We have some, but all of us have the capacity to take this picture in this moment and the things we know that are going on in the world and say, okay, how can I practice gratitude in my life? Because to some degree, it's almost honoring those who are not as fortunate as we are. Because I know for me, I have in the past, but I'm working on that because I do not have a genetic flaw, as you said. I have really worked in the last 5 years on practicing gratitude every day. I get up, Marshall, at 5 o'clock. I do the same routine every single day for about an hour and a half. I have a very structured morning, 6 days a week. And the fourth thing on my list every morning is I write down 5 things I'm grateful for at that moment. And it could be the warm cup of coffee in my hand. It's the birds chirping. Sometimes they're small things I'm just grateful for. And I have found by doing that has changed my mindset to the point where I see a lot more beauty in the life around me and a lot less negative because my mind is being programmed to seek those out. And we all can do that exercise. It's free. It takes very little time. And we all have the capacity to sit down and write or think about the things we're most grateful for on a consistent basis. And
I think it's a great idea.
In that picture, actually, with your permission, of course, I'm going to have that put on my wall because I want it to be a constant reminder of how fortunate we are and how we have to use the fortunes we've had and the blessings we've been given in our life to impact the world around us. Because when I watched your documentary, oh my goodness, I watched it 2 or 3 times. When you talked about that story right away, I just took a picture of my computer screen they blew up the picture, and I had it put on the computer. They showed it. And I took a picture of that, so it's a little blurry, but it is a really good reminder of how blessed many of us are in the world, and we can't take that for granted.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think that's a very good idea.
Well, can you?
I'll tell you what. You send me an email, and I'll make a nice copy of the picture and write a little note on it and send it back to you.
I will do that this afternoon. I'll get an email out to you. Thank you. I appreciate that, Marshall. One of the things I was really struck by, and I remember reading this in 2007 or 2008, whenever I read What Got You Here Won't Get You There, was never start a question with no, but, or however. Is that something you still practice?
Yeah.
Tell me.
Well, don't respond to anybody's ideas with no, but, or however.
Okay.
Don't give positive recognition with no, but, or however, because that word but just destroys whatever you said before it.
And I know in the documentary that I watched, you had an executive sitting next to you in the airplane, and you told him that right away. And I don't know how many times he said that. He
lost $420. I charge him $20 every time you do it. He lost $420 in an hour and a half.
And you raised a lot of money for charities with that.
Yeah, the money all goes to charity. And at the end of the hour and a half, he said, "Thank you." He said, "I had no idea. I do this constantly." He said, "I did it 21 times with you, throwing it in my face every time I did it. How many times would I have done it had you not been throwing it in my face? 50 times, 100 times?" Now, his feedback was people thought he was stubborn. He said, "No wonder people think I'm stubborn." The first thing I do when someone talks, I prove I know more than them or they're wrong over and over and over again.
Well, since I saw that, I've been really focusing on not responding to people's statements with those 3 words. And even in my writing, I've been really catching myself. When I journal to myself in the mornings, I catch myself, even today, I said something to the effect of, I'm very excited to interview Marshall Goldsmith today. I feel I'm very prepared. And then I started to put, however, am I overly prepared? Sometimes you can over prepare sometimes, and it throws you off. And I crossed it right off. I said, the only question I have is perhaps I'm overly prepared. So, but I caught myself wanting to use the but or however word.
Good.
My clients won't be happy if I start charging them every time they say those, but I'm gonna throw that out there this week.
Well, the money all goes to charity anyway. Let them pick the charity.
One of the stories that I
got a funny story about this.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
One guy, I'm charging. My clients a lot of them are rich people, right? So this guy's, and the money's all going to a charity. I have $20. He picked the charity, $40. So he gets up to like $100. He said, "This is expensive." I said, "Excuse me. You personally donated over $10 million to this charity last year, and you're complaining about $20? What's wrong with you?" He said, "You're right. $20 is not it."
It's
I
not.
just didn't want to. He didn't want to hear it.
Right, that's right. Yeah, we don't really like that instant feedback coming at us when we make those type of errors.
Right.
I know you have been close friends with Frances Hesselbein before she passed. I know the former CEO of Girl Scouts of America. Will you share the story about doing the laundry?
Yeah, to me, that story. Oh, number one, a little context. Frances Hesselbein, Peter Drucker said, was the greatest leader he has ever met in his life. And Peter Drucker would not say that for no reason. He did not give gratuitous compliments to anybody. So Frances Hesselbein, just an amazing human being. I had the honor of, quote, coaching her. I was a volunteer, but of whatever she learned from me, I learned 100 times from her. So anyway, she calls me up one day and says, "I want you to give this talk, if you don't mind, to the heads of the Girl Scouts in the big cities, New York, Chicago, L.A." I said, "Well, Frances, I'm happy to do it, but I'm booked like every day of the week for a long time. I could only do it on Saturday." She said, "You work on Saturday, we work on Saturday. You're the volunteer, not me. No problems." Well, then I thought a little more. I said, "Look, Frances, it's very embarrassing for me to bring up, but I'm in a different city every day. I'm going to run out of clean clothes. And, you got to have clean clothes eventually. And is there any way that somehow you could help me get clean clothes?" Frances said, not at all a problem. We're going to work here in the Girl Scout Center. You spend the night here. And all you got to do is take all your clothes, put them in a pile in the middle of the floor, and then I'll have someone pick up your dirty clothes. We'll clean them all. And then when you get done, all your clothes are clean. Well, I said, I was embarrassed to say this, but thank you so much, Frances, for doing that. So the next morning, I'm having breakfast with the head of the Girl Scouts in New York and L.A., very distinguished women, right? And I look, and walking down the hall is Frances Hesselbein. She's carrying my dirty clothes, dirty underwear, dirty socks. She's taking them herself to the laundry room. Every woman saw her. What a message. Talk about servant leadership. Whoa. She did not have to give a speech.
She just acted leadership.
And by the way, after that, she didn't have to give a speech. No.
When I read that, or I believe I saw that somewhere, and I thought about myself when I was younger, Marshall, when I was coaching leadership and doing a lot of talks and coaching on leadership to my clients, and I was so adamantly against servant leadership. Robert Greenleaf, who is the kind of the founder of the term servant leadership, anyway, I would bash him in talks and coaching sessions and say, there's no such thing. You don't put the cart before the horse. You have to have the horse first. I was young. I was 29 years old when I started coaching. I was very full of a lot of bravado, a lot of ego, a lot of insecurity. And my clients would say, well, why is servant leadership so bad? And I'd say, because you can't have leadership without the leader being first. And that's kind of how I somewhat grew up in the corporate world in the 5 or 6 years I was there. But it wasn't taught to us. It was just kind of the message I heard. And it was probably 8 to 10 years after I got into coaching. So maybe, 18, 19 years ago, when I started making a shift and thinking, wait a minute, why am I so against servant leadership? What's wrong with servant leadership? And when you study, whether it's Jesus or Buddha, any moral philosopher from our history, it's all about servant leadership. And I think Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, maybe, or one of his books, kind of set me on that path back in the day of thinking, wait a minute, maybe there's something to this phrase. And now that's really all I coach is when I talk leadership, it's all primarily servant leadership. So I was able to thankfully catch myself in my insecurities and my lack of experience and wisdom. But it took me about 8 to 10 years after I started coaching before I made that metamorphosis and that change. And when I heard about Frances with the laundry, I thought that's the perfect example. It'll be imprinted in my memory, and I can visualize that in my head every time I'm working with a client and working with them on their leadership skill sets. So,
yeah, it's just, she was a wonderful leader, a wonderful role model. She lived to be 107, and and I'll tell you another story about her. I got to see her right before she died, and someone was taking care of her. They called me and said, if you want to say goodbye, you got to say goodbye. So I basically went over to say goodbye. And I thought she's probably in a coma. She can't even hear me, whatever. So this woman says to her, Marshall's here. Her eyes light up. She says, Marshall, it's so wonderful to see you. She talked to me 20 minutes. She said stuff like, I just feel great. She was dying. She couldn't eat. She couldn't move. She was no doubt in excruciating pain. I feel great. How are you doing? My wife's Lida. How's Lida? I made a call with Lida. She talks to Lida on the phone. She could barely talk. When Lida was on the phone, boom, her voice picks up very strong. That 20 minutes was not about her. It was about me. It was about me. Well, she was dying. She wasn't thinking about herself. She never complained. It was never poor me. Look at me. I'm dying. I'm miserable. No, I feel great. Gee, it's so wonderful to see you. You've meant so much in my life. Thank you. You've been such a wonderful friend. I was the customer, not her.
And that to me is the definition of what you call an earned life. She's earned her life. Wow.
That was it. Yeah. And she never changed. She died at 107.
I saw that. I couldn't. That's amazing.
Yeah.
What an
How many
impact
times-
she's made on the world.
And on me.
On you, yeah.
How many times have I ever heard her complain about poor me? I'm miserable. Well, it's not fair. I'm a victim. Never. You know, another great leader, our coach, Alan Mullally, was CEO Ford, and he was in the movie as well.
I saw that.
You know, Alan Mullally is just an amazing guy. You know, huge track record, a financial track record, but also 97% approval rating from every employee at a union company. You know, I've known Alan for decades. How many times I hear her complain? Never. Never.
I loved we talking about his life plan review. I think it was it was business plan review that he would use with his executives with the red, yellow, green.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy.
The simplicity of that idea. And
he's an amazing man. He didn't do anything complicated. He just did it.
Wasn't he at Boeing before he went to Ford? Was it Boeing?
He was at Boeing for the 737, huge success at Boeing. He went to Ford. He was at Boeing for their heyday, and then he went to Ford, totally turned the company around. Yeah. Yeah,
I like when the two of you were talking in the documentary, and they were. I think when everybody for the first time, and folks, I'm going to ask you to read the Earned Life. That'll give you a really good insight of Alan's business plan review process with the red, yellow, green. But everybody had green or something like that the first time he implemented this, and you both of you were laughing and saying, "Well, what was the company at the beginning? They're losing how much money per year, and how much debt did they have?" But yet everybody had showed green, and everything they were doing was working really well. Because they were so afraid of perhaps a former CEO or typical leadership of coming down on you if you shared that your department wasn't performing as well as it should. And so you wanted to spotlight your successes and not spotlight the things that weren't working so well, and how he turned that around and to make it a very safe place for executives, leaders around the company and around the world to say, hey, we are doing some really great things over in my department, but we're also have some struggles that we need help with. And again, that's kind of right around that idea somewhat of servant leadership. You know, just I'm here to help.
Well, I mean, you know, Alan, the company was losing $17 billion and going bankrupt. And he said, everyone talk about your top 5 priorities. 16 people in the room. Green is on plan. Yellow is I'm not on plan, but I have a strategy to get there. And red is I don't have a strategy. 16 people, 80 priorities, all green, and the company is losing $17 billion. Alan said, well, look, everybody's on plan, and we're losing $17 billion, and we're going bankrupt. Maybe we should reconsider the plan. This seems to be a very bad plan. Well, they have been brought up. There's an old management say, don't come to me with a problem. Don't come to me unless you have a solution. That is such bad advice. So what they've been taught, if you have a problem but you have a solution, don't come to me. So, you know, they said, okay, boss, I won't. I have a problem, A, and I don't have a solution, B. So therefore, what did you just tell me? Don't come to me. Yep. I'm going to hide the problem.
Hide the problem. Wow. I really liked the video of you of the scene where you were shooting pool with Jay Wagner, I think it is. And I was watching your style of that. You have that calmness about you, which I'm sure you've heard before. When you're talking with people, you pull people in. And I was watching the second time I watched the documentary. I was watching you laugh with Jay, and you guys were having a good time. But as soon as you knelt down to shoot that, you had your stick in your hand and you were aiming. You know, I'm not a pool player, so I've never really enjoyed pool. But as soon as you got down, the stick in your hand, and you were just setting up, your face went to a different focus. I don't know if you ever noticed that in the documentary, but I would go back and watch that. You went from this laughing, calm to I'm focused now. And it's a microsecond change. It's a nanosecond. But I thought about that for a moment, and I thought that right there encapsulates what I've learned about you through your writings and through your speeches and through the things I've witnessed on you. But I really like that you said when Jay was getting ready to sink the 8 ball, and he says, with this shot, I'm going to win. And you said, unless you scratch. And sure enough, he scratched. It was a perfect ending.
Well, you know what? You couldn't have scripted that.
You couldn't have, no. I
used to shoot pool for money when I was a kid. So I was never that great a pool player, but a great psychologist. So I won a lot of money shooting pool just because of that scene. See, I intentionally put that thought in his head.
Yep.
Don't scratch. And then what do you immediately do? Immediately
scratch on the next shot.
Now, I want to say one thing before we forget. You've been mentioning my documentary. I want everybody to go to www.marshallgoldsmith.com. My documentary is online and it's free.
Yes.
Almost all my articles are free. There's a whole coach you can come to. Coaching.com is free. My website, the marshallgoldsmith.ai. Go to marshallgoldsmith.ai. Ask me any questions. That's free. So I'm giving everything away. So just go to my website, start looking at articles, watch the documentary. There's videos. It's all free.
Yeah. I'm going to include a link in the show notes for this episode. So everybody click on that right away. I keep it up on my bar at all times because I go on there sometimes and search articles. I just printed off yesterday and I sent it to several clients. Your article, Leadership is a Contact Sport, by the way, Marshall. And when did you write this? Do you remember?
I don't exactly remember what year it was, but that article's been read millions of times. And it basically is 86,000 people in a research study. And it showed that, leaders that get feedback and follow up over and over again get better. And leaders that go to program, like American Express was part of that study, by the way. Mm-hmm. You might have been part of that study. I don't know. But American Express had thousands of people in the database. So what happened is everybody got feedback at American Express. We did a class for all the leaders. They all got feedback. We invented the first 360 feedback, I think, for American Express. They're in the study, and then we did measure, did the leader talk to you like we taught them to? Did they follow up on a regular basis? And if they did, look at the research, they got better. If they didn't, they didn't. Well, the learning point is they didn't get better because they went to my class or read a book, or they got feedback. They got better because they did something. You got to work.
Well, I remember reading this article several years ago, and I printed it up yesterday, and I actually took it and sent it to several clients last night. And when I had it printed up and I had it in my hand, I thought, I have this in my leadership file somewhere. In my leadership file, I do. So, but I have a fresh copy now, so I'm going to reread it. I have a question. How many years have you been doing coaching now? Then, what's the?
Well, 47 roughly.
And yet, you have someone call you every night and ask you daily questions.
Right.
Can you explain that to us a little bit better? I love that idea.
Yeah, because it's very simple. I'm too cowardly and undisciplined to do this stuff by myself. And it's hard. See, everything, you go to my website, I give away everything. I mean, you can understand stakeholder coaching. It's not complicated. You can understand daily questions. I don't say anything is hard to understand. It's just hard to do. It's phenomenally hard to do. Most people, the daily questions, you ask yourself questions every day, you get better. Well, it's not hard to understand. Just pick 6 questions. If you did nothing else, there's another article I wrote about 6 questions. Send me a note, 6-question research, or it's on the website, the daily question. Look up the daily questions article. I think it's called Questions That Make a Difference. I forget. Mm-hmm. But in any case, you ask yourself questions every day, and I'm going to give you 6. And they all begin with, did I do my best to? The first question is, did I do my best to set clear goals? So every day that you get the day started, you set goals. Did I do my best to make progress toward achieving the goals after I set them? Measure that every day. Did I do my best to every day find meaning? Rather than waiting for the world to be meaningful, did I create meaning? Did I do my best to be happy rather than waiting for others to make us happy? Did I do my best to be happy myself? Did I do my best to be fully engaged? And did I do my best to build great relationships with other people? Every day, 6 questions. Did you do your best? If you do nothing based on this call, but do those 6 questions every day, you're going to have a better life. The average person quits in 2 weeks.
What I like, so do you think, obviously it's more.
Let's stop for a second. Have you tried to do this yourself?
I mean, I have not.
Why?
I'm afraid.
Of course.
I'm afraid of what my answers will be.
I am too cowardly and undisciplined to do it by myself. Mm-hmm. And I wrote the book. Somebody said, don't I know the theory? I wrote the theory. I know the theory. I know how hard it is. I'm giving you a challenge. Starting today, you're going to do these daily questions every day. It takes 3 or 4 minutes a day. It's hard to do, I'll tell you. See, call me up in 6 months and tell me how you're doing.
I commit that I'll start doing these today.
Call me in 6 months. See if you've got the guts to make it 6 months.
Well, Marshall, one thing I'm really good at is follow up, and I will definitely be calling you, and I'll mark it down 6 months from today. In fact, I'm going to know it right now.
Call me up with a report.
I will certainly do that. Yep, it's sitting on my desk now because I have these questions printed up. I had it in my podcast preparation notes. I just find that to be what taught me is one of the things I share with my clients is, I've hired coaches, I have mentors, I have I have an accountability team that I've used over the years many, many times where I report to them every week what I'm going to do and whether I've done it. And so I tell my clients, I do this for a living, and yet I still struggle quite often. I same thing, afraid and undisciplined. I'm afraid of the answers I'm going to find. I'm not disciplined enough to do these on my own. So reaching out to other people for me has been it's been a lifesaver. And you put somewhere wrote, I believe somewhere I heard that coaching is for winners. And I think about that, and I think it's even beyond that. It's asking for help is for winners. And when I started this business, and I kind of alluded to this before we started recording, Marshall, when I started this at 29 years old, I purposely never read a book on coaching. And there were a few books scattered out there, not very many. And I didn't talk to any other coaches not that I knew many, but I knew there were some out there at 29 years ago. And I said, no, I'm going to do this on my own. I'm going to do it my way. I don't want anybody telling me how to do this. Oh, what a mistake that was. I look back and think, man, that was the one big blunder I've made in my coaching career is at an early age, I thought I was a rock and I was an island and I could do it all on my own. And I have definitely changed that mind shift, thankfully, probably through necessity more than anything else over my life. But I do like this. I love this idea of these questions, and I will commit today that I will do this every day.
Good.
And I will report to you back in 6 months.
And life is good, and it's been wonderful to talk to you.
It's been a pleasure talking to you, my friend. I know you've got other things and other commitments today, but I just want to take the time to, again, I said this before we started today, you've been a personal and professional hero of mine for years. I want to thank you for coming on the podcast, but more than anything, I want to thank you for the impact you've made on me and on the world around you. I'm blessed to share this earth with you right now.
Well, thank you so much. You've made my day, and I just hope that maybe a few people listening to this podcast hopefully have a little better life based on our conversation.
I know I have. Thank you, my friend. Have a blessed day today.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. Honestly, this was one of my highlight podcasts. This is episode number 152, I believe. And I'm so glad to be able to share Marshall and his wisdom and his journey and his beauty with you today. I'm blessed to have this interview to share it with all of you. I'll talk to you all a week from today, same time, same place. In the meantime, please get out there and strive to give and be your best. Show love and respect to others and to yourself. And please live with purpose. I appreciate each and every single one of you.